So, my name is Allison Pryor. I work at WLS. I am in the IT department, and my title is the ILS specialist. So, really, what that means is my expertise is the all things Evergreen, so what the staff are using, and then patron facing resources. So, specifically, the OPAC and the app. And the OPAC means the public catalog. So today we're doing a deep dive into getting acquainted with Evergreen. And so I know that there's a few people that registered that have been working in libraries for quite a while and they're using this as a refresher, but there's some new names here. And so I'm curious to know who is new to either libraries in general or just new to Westchester Library System. So I will call on you. I can see all your names. So I want to know how long you've been at your library and what are you doing there? Are you at the circ desk? Are you at reference? Are you in tech services? And so I'm going to start with Fred. You were the first one to log in today, so I'm going to start with you.
Hi, yeah, I work at Portchester, and I go back and forth between Circ and Reference a lot.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. And how long have you been at Portchester?
about going to be 7 years in the fall.
Like, cool. I love Portchester. Portchester was one of the first libraries that I worked at, so that's
Oh
awesome.
yeah.
All right. So how about you, Ellen?
I'm new to Westchester Libraries, but I worked at a library out on Long Island for about 8 years.
Okay, okay. So which library are you new to in Westchester and how long have you been there?
I'm at Katona.
Okay.
I'm about to start about my second week there in the
Okay.
children's department.
Children's amazing. That's great. Zachary?
Hi, can you repeat the question? We've been having a few technical issues. I didn't hear.
Oh, absolutely. So I want to know how long you've been at your library, if you're new to libraries, and what are you going to be doing at your library?
Sure. I'm at Ardsley. I volunteered for about a year and a half, doing mostly shelving and odd jobs. I'm now a clerk. So yeah.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Constantine?
Hey, I just started working at the New Public Library as a full-time library assistant, and yeah, I started in January, so yeah, learning everything about libraries as fast as I can.
Speed run, got it. All right, Camilla?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Hello, I'm Camila, and I've been working at the Portchester Radbrook Public Library. It's like a year and a half.
Okay,
Yeah. And I
excellent.
have
And what do you do at Portchester?
I work at circulation desk, but
Okay,
now I'm training children's and the children's section as well. So I'm
amazing.
just like I'm doing a little bit of everything basically, but I really like
That's
it.
that's great. That's great. I was in the children's room with T when I was at Portchester, so um, big fan. All right, and Stephanie, you just joined us. I've just been asking people which library you work at, how long you've been there, and what do you typically do at the library?
So I work at Mount Kisco Public Library. I am the library business manager. I used to be head of circ and worked in tech. Siobhan, our head of circ, just left for Scarsdale.
Hmm.
So I was just, getting a little refresher and seeing, hopefully this will be recorded so I can pass it on to my new staff to watch.
Yes, yes, this is going to be recorded. So this will be, you guys can share this with whomever you think will need it. And I see Patty just joined us, or you're not Patty.
No, I'm
Sorry.
not. Hold on one second.
Patty, I've just been asking people to introduce themselves, what library you work at, what do you do, and how long have you been there?
Oh, I'm Jake. I work at the Portchester Rybrook Public Library. I'm a little bit of everywhere. I'm circulation, reference, children's, and I've been working here for almost 2 years.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. So nice to meet you. And with that, we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And one second, let me just close that tab out. You don't need to see my inbox. And so those that may have joined a little bit after my spiel, this is going to be recorded today. I do encourage and invite you guys to unmute yourselves if you have questions, if you need me to repeat anything or slow down. I will periodically be checking the chat box, so you can also dump your questions, comments in there as well. We have 2 hours scheduled. I don't know if we're going to need the full 2 hours, but I always want to make sure that everyone has enough time to get any questions that they have answered today. So our intro to Evergreen is really geared towards new staff, but as I mentioned, this is also a great refresher because in my experience with training people at libraries and how to use Evergreen and just speaking with staff in my day-to-day, typically you get when you start at the library, you get your training, and then you're kind of left to your own devices to figure it out on your own. And so we can learn a lot through that way. That's how I learned Evergreen, but it's also helpful to have some designated time to kind of go through the appropriate workflows and the best practices for everything. So starting off is the library system and its policies. So Westchester Library System serves all of our public libraries throughout the county, and we have 38 public libraries with 43 locations that make up the system. Now, there are shared system-wide policies, and we will be talking about those, but it's also really important to remember that every library in the system is its own institution. And so every library has its own specific policies and its own culture. So I'm going to be talking a lot about policies and workflows, and some of them may not apply specifically to your location. So it's also important to know who's at your library that you can go to with your questions. If you're in CERC, that's going to be your head of CERC. Reference, that's going to be your library in charge, or your direct supervisor or your director. There's also the WLS IT help desk, and I will show you guys how to contact me or our systems librarian, Lindsay Stratton, with any Evergreen questions at the end of this training. I'm also going to be talking about the IT wiki throughout this training. So if you're new to the system itself, you may not be familiar with this resource, but the IT wiki is a WordPress site that's available to all staff, no matter what you do in Westchester Library System. And it's basically a resource site that has help guides, tips, tricks, information, not just Evergreen, but all things technology that your library may be utilizing. So Evergreen, what is Evergreen? So Evergreen is an open source library software that assists libraries with our day-to-day workflows. So this is what we are logging into, and it's also referred to as the staff client because it's what the staff are using to work with patrons, items to catalog, and so on. Open source software means that this is a collaborative software. So there are library systems throughout the country and world that use Evergreen. And because it's a web-based browser, this can be accessed through your preferred browser. However, you'll notice that if you have the Evergreen shortcut icon on your work desktop, it will open in Microsoft Edge. You can always copy and paste the Evergreen URL and bookmark that into a preferred browser, if that is your preference. There's also going to be certain features and functions in Evergreen that just do not apply to us as a library system, and that's because we're an open source software. Other library systems that collaborate with Evergreen need those features. So not just Westchester Library System, but all of the library systems that use this, basically we all vote on what do we need this to do for us. And so based on that vote, and which libraries can finance those developments, that's how new features come about. I mentioned the ILS previously, and I know that's not typically a common term that we're all familiar with. So the ILS really stands for the Integrated Library System, and it's basically a web of all of the things that staff and patrons use technology-wise that make up the library system. So for the staff-facing side, pretty much Evergreen is going to be our main focus of the ILS. After that is going to be the WLS data dashboard. Now, if you're not familiar with what the data dashboard is, that's okay. But essentially, that's where your library is getting all of your monthly and then annual statistics for reporting purposes. Other pieces of the ILS are going to be the OPAC, or the patron catalog, and then the mobile app. So it's also the pieces that the patrons are using. And just a quick little breakdown, the difference between what the staff client and the OPAC is. So the staff client, again, that's what we're using in our everyday workflows. It's Evergreen. It's what we're logging into to work with our patrons. This is what allows us to search the catalog, place holds, check out items, edit items, add items, delete items. Whereas the OPAC, which stands for Online Public Access Catalog, you'll also hear it as the patron catalog, or referred to Aspen, which is just the name of the software. This is what the patrons are using, and patrons can search the catalog, place holds, they can create reading lists, they can manage their holds. There's quite a lot that they can do. So moving over to Evergreen, Evergreen is going to have a lot of shortcuts or a lot of ways to get to a singular destination. So if you've used Evergreen for any amount of time, you'll figure that out, that from your home page, you're going to have what I call quick links or quick menus. And then you're always going to have access to your top drop-down menus as well. So I'm going to exit out of this slide deck, and we're going to go straight into Evergreen itself. So when I am logged into Evergreen, I am logged into my workstation at the location that I work at. So I work at WLS full-time, and then I also work part-time doing circulation at the Peekskill Library on the weekends. So I always need to make sure that I am logging into the correct workstation. Now, when you sign in the morning, let's log out and do this process. You're going to sign in with your username. So your username is typically going to be the same username that you use to log into the computer, and it's referred to as your Active Directory name. And your password is going to be the same as well. When you log in, though, you want to pay attention to your workstation dropdown if there is a dropdown available. So if you work at more than one location, you're going to have a workstation for each library. And it's important to have separate workstations because, like I mentioned, every location has its own policies and culture. Those policies are connected to your workstation. The first time you're logging into Evergreen, or if you're still new to Evergreen, you want to make sure that you are spending or setting some time aside to customize your workstation. And you can do that in the administration dropdown by going into that workstation page. On the left side, you're going to see registered workstations, and this is where you're going to create your workstation name. Typically, the naming format is going to be a repetition of your library code. Every library has a library code, which is 3 letters, and it's typically some type of abbreviation of the library name, and then hyphen last name. Now, some libraries have kind of come up with their own naming schema. The most important thing is that you remember what it is. Because Evergreen is web-based, depending on which browser you're using, if there's updates or if there are system upgrades to Evergreen, if you clear your cache and your cookies, you may be prompted to re-register your workstation the next time you log in. And that's okay. That's not uncommon to have to do that as long as you remember the correct workstation name. And what that would look like is if I had to re-register my workstation, I'm just going to put in the same name I typically use, and I'm going to click register. And it says workstation is already registered. What you will typically see though is an alert that says this workstation already exists, use it anyway. And you'll want to click yes, because that's Evergreen remembering all of your settings. If you don't see that, then you're going to notice that you're not going to have all of the customizations that you just set up. What are those customizations? Well, first, we're going to start back in our workstation page. On the right side, we want to make sure that our default and preferred libraries are set. So your default search library should be set to West for all of Westchester Library System. This specifically is going to show up for you if you search the catalog, and this is what's going to include every library in your search results, which is what you want if you're looking for something for a patron. Your preferred library is going to be the location in which you're working at. So this is going to make sure that when you are searching the catalog and you're looking at an item table, it's pulling your library's items to the top of the list so you can quickly see, oh, my library has this already. This is also going to determine that everything is working correctly. So if you work at more than one location, you don't want to be physically standing in library A, but being logged into library B's location, because that's going to mess everything up and it's going to be very confusing. Okay, I see something in the chat, so I'm just going to pause. If you had to change your workstation password, what does the process for that look like? Is it done on our side, or would we have to contact WSIT? So that's a great question. So there are libraries that do not use WSIT as their IT service. And so for those libraries, you guys have your own process of resetting your passwords. For libraries that do use WSIT, your supervisor has to call in for a password reset. And the reason for that is because it really boils down to security. So if Zach needs his password reset, then whoever is an authorized user at his library is going to call. And then we're going to reset your password with a temporary password. It's usually your library code followed by a string of numbers, and then you reset it to whatever it needs to be. The next time you log into Evergreen, you're going to make sure that you are using that updated password because those are connected. Evergreen is going to give you 3 chances to log in with your password. So after the 3rd incorrect attempt, that's when it locks you out. And then you can wait 10 minutes and try again, or you can just have someone make that call to WSIT. All right, another thing that you want to take a look at in this page when you are new to your workstation is your print templates. So your print templates is going to really control mainly your receipts. So if you are printing receipts or if you're printing the holds pull list, this is where all of those customizations can be made. Now, I'm not expecting every single person to know HTML. Not everyone grew up in the MySpace days. So the good news is there's typically one person already at a library that has customized all of these receipts. And I say customized because I'm going to pull up the whole transit slip, for example. And so you'll notice that when you print out transit slips, your library code is typically going to be, or the library code is typically going to be printed at the very top of it. And if you are pulling items out of the bins, you'll notice that some libraries do have slight customization. So it might have their library code, the full library name, there might be a border around it. All of those can get set up in this page. Now, whoever is at your library that's got these already to go for you, what they do is they export these to your library's share drive or your file picker, however you refer to it. So whoever's new, they can open up this interface and they just click on that import button. And what that will do is it will open up your share drive. You can choose the file and then you can import all of these hold slips. Oh, and I froze. What's going on? Oh no. Okay, hold on. Let me cancel that. Why did I freeze? That's annoying. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Okay. Cancel. Okay, there we go. We're good. All right, back to sharing. Okay. All right, let's see if that works again. You know, I think it just doesn't want me to import anything right now. Okay, that's. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're just not going to do that again. That's fine. All right. So I'm going to move into another screen, but we're still talking about customizations and getting our workstation set up. So after I make sure that my workstation preferences are set, I have the right print templates imported to my workstation. Now I want to focus on my columns. And when I refer to columns, I'm referring to any time that I really open up any screen in Evergreen and there's the option for information to be displayed, there's going to be columns. And so if I were new and had a new workstation, the columns that Evergreen chooses as your default aren't necessarily going to be relevant to what you need them to be. So I do have a cheat sheet that I will share with everyone in the follow-up that basically goes through any possible page that has the option to customize your columns for what is most likely going to be the most helpful for you. But when, for example, we are in the patron search page, and so if we ever have to look a patron up, sometimes the information that Evergreen gives you right off the bat isn't going to help us narrow down our patron. So I'm resetting it to what the default is going to look like. So we get home library and profile. That's helpful. We have last name, first name, card, mailing street, created on, date of birth, middle name, ID. That's a lot of information. And maybe I just want the home library, the profile, the name, the barcode, and maybe mailing street and phone number. Because if I have a John Smith in front of me, chances are if I just search John Smith, I'm going to get quite a few of those in my returns. So I need to be able to narrow it down. And so I'm going to do that by opening up my gear icon. And if I scroll down, I can see all of the available columns, and I can always pick and choose from here. But I'm going to advise you to use your first option, which is manage columns. There's a sort visible columns to the top. So any columns that are already selected are going to be moved to the top so you can quickly and clearly see what's selected. And then I'm just going to deselect what I don't need. And I'm going to look for daytime phone. And if you see me pass it, speak up. There it is. Okay. The last step is I'm going to open that gear icon one more time and then save, because these will not stick. I do have to remember to save them if I want them going forward. Okay. So I'm using my home icon to come back to my home screen, and all of these boxes here, this is what I refer to as the quick menus or the quick links. And you'll see them repeated in the drop downs. Typically for circulation, you're mainly going to be clicking checkout, check-in, search for patron by name, or register new patron, but your search dropdown is going to give you more options. So this is where we can also take a look at the holds list. We can renew items. We can retrieve the last patron that we worked with. We can access user buckets. we can look at the hold shelf, we can replace barcodes, and then we can also access item status from here. There's a few things that I did skip over because they're not necessarily relevant or utilized every day by our staff. Our catalog dropdown is going to allow us to search the catalog. There's another option for item status, which is you'll see is repeated in quite a few places in Evergreen. I can access buckets, and typically if you don't have cataloging permissions, this is pretty much all you're going to need from this dropdown. I can also start searching the catalog from this search bar here. And so I'm going to do so with a title search, but I could also use a keyword search as well. I can also initiate that search just with my enter key on my keyboard, or I can click that search button. So if I don't have any search results, the one thing I will say that is annoying about the staff client catalog is it's very persnickety about our spelling. And so if there are any typos or if things aren't correct, it's going to give us issues, whereas the patron catalog is a lot more forgiving. So when I'm searching the catalog, it's typically going to default to the keyword search as our first search query option, but underneath the location chooser and our search button, we have a option for search preferences. And so this is further customization that we can do for our workstations. So you'll see your default search and preferred library, which we just set up. But in default search pane, this is where we can switch from keyword search to numeric to mark search to browse or shelf browse, depending on what you do in your day-to-day workflow. So someone that works primarily in tech services, meaning that they're the ones that are linking or adding items to the catalog or editing items, they may want to have numeric search as their default because this will allow them to quickly search ISBNs or barcodes. You can also rearrange your default sort order. So it's going to default to relevance, but you can choose alphabetical by title, author, or sort by public date and popularity. If you only want available items, so only items that have an available status to be included in your search results, you can turn that on. You can group all of your formats and editions together. So format is another word for type. So a book is a format, large print is a format, audio is a format. And so if there's a title that has all of those options, we can group those together and it can condense our search results. You can also set how many search results per page you want. So I believe the default when you first register your workstation is going to be 10. That's going to get old very quickly if you're looking up something for a patron. So I have mine set to 50. There is no limit. I do recommend capping it at about 100 because in my experience, anything more than that, your search results are going to take much longer to load. You can also exclude electronic resources. So if you don't want the audiobooks or the ebooks, which typically aren't in the staff catalog, the audiobooks are, but the ebooks aren't. You can exclude those, and then you can also turn on highlight search terms. Okay, so I'm going to go back to searching. And I'm just doing a keyword search, but I can use my catalog field drop downs to search by title, journal title, author, subject series, or digital book plate. Digital book plate is an older feature from when we first went live in Evergreen. Typically, you're not going to see them that often, but from time to time, you will see a record that has a little tag next to it, and it can say donated by the Friends of the Library or part of the disconnect to reconnect grant, and that is typically a digital book plate. You can also add additional search fields. So if you really want to get specific with your search or advanced search, you can add as many fields as you need. There's also more filters available too if you just click that show more filters button, excuse me. Your search results will be listed, and so they are going to include a book cover, typically your title. Your title is linked. Your author is also linked. So if I want to see what else Nora Roberts has in the catalog, I can click her name, and then it will tell me or show me everything that is linked to that specific author. There's also going to be a format icon, so I can quickly see that this is a large print book and my patron may just want the regular format. The call number, physical description, ISBN, all of that is available. And then there is also an option to turn on show more details, which will give you a preview of your item table, which is essentially just what library has this and what's the status of it. Moving over to the left, you'll be able to see how many copies are available in the system. So 3 out of these 4 copies are available in the system. And if there are any available at my library, those will be listed and highlighted underneath. Evergreen's also going to show me how many active holds are on a specific title. I have a place hold button, so I can place a title hold, meaning that I am placing a hold on any copy linked to a title record. This is typically the quickest way for our holds to come through for our patrons. Once I click that button, it's going to prompt me to fill out this hold form. And so I would scan my patron's barcode. If I didn't have their barcode handy, I could always open up my search for patron right here by clicking that button. I'm going to click cancel. One thing to keep in mind when you are placing holds for patrons is the pickup location is going to default to the workstation that is placing that hold. Evergreen is assuming that if somebody is calling or showing up to that specific library to place a hold, they're going to want to pick it up there. So part of your conversation with your patron is to ask where they want to pick this up. So if I'm at Ardsley, I'm going to just say, hey, by the way, you want to pick this up here, right? And they might say no. So if they want to pick it up somewhere else, maybe they live in Ardsley, but they work in Mount Pleasant, we can just click into this field and choose from the drop down and find that library code. You also have the option to suspend a hold. So suspending a hold is placing a hold on a title, but you're telling Evergreen just to put a pause on it. Patrons may have a ton of books on their that they're already working through, and they may not be ready for this just yet. So when we suspend a hold, we're getting that patron online, but we're just kind of putting a freeze on it. We can put an activation date on this before we finish this process. So if a patron knows that they're going to be ready for it on March 31st, we can put that in, or they can activate it themselves either through the app or through the catalog. I also have a return button that's going to take me back to my search results if the patron changes their mind. Also, on the left side of your screen, you're going to have what is called facets. These are additional filters that can be applied to your search results. And so they're going to be broken up by category. So I'm searching my search was a first impressions, a title by Nora Roberts, but I can narrow this search down more if I needed to. Clicking on my title, my linked title, is also going to take me into the title record. So the title record is also referred to as the bib record or bibliographic record. So when we get new books, our catalogers at WLS, they create this title record and add it to the catalog. And so when you're looking at this, this is going to have information about this title. When libraries get the physical copies sent to them, you are linking them to this title record. And so you'll see your copies and all of the other library copies listed in the item table, but you'll also see them in the holdings view. Holdings, items, and copies all mean the same thing. And it's really just books. It's just that individual book. Because you're going to hear me switch out those words. Anytime we're talking about Evergreen, if it's this training or another training, you're going to hear me switch back and forth. You can also set defaults in your title record display. So if I don't want to see the item table when I click into the title record, if I want to see the holdings view instead, I can set that as my default view with this dark gray button over here. This is going to default to your library, but you can always set it to the system. And this is just another way of looking at that item table, but it's going to give you more information than what the item table gives you. So the item table, it's going to have the owning location, call number or item notes, shelving location, the barcode. There is a link to view item status underneath the barcode. And if it's your item and you have tech services permissions, you can edit this as well. As staff, we can also place item holds. So an item hold or a call number hold is us placing a hold on this specific barcode or copy. Only staff can do this, and it does take a little bit longer for these holds to come in for patrons. So typically, depending on how soon a patron needs it, a title hold is the quickest way to go about it. You can also see status, due date if it's checked out, and how many times this title has circulated. Whereas that holdings view page is going to give you way more information, and there's even more columns to add to it. Your staff view is also going to give you another breakdown of information about this specific record, and you're also going to have links too. One thing that I really appreciate about this is sometimes they do have the subject or genre tags. And so you can click on romance fiction and then your search results are going to be anything that has that romance fiction tag applied to it. So that's another really quick way to get a list of titles if you have a patron that wants those types of items. I'm just going to pause for questions about the catalog before we move on.
I had one quick question.
Yes.
What is the difference between the S_ library codes and the normal library codes?
That's an excellent question. So let me go back to the placehold form because that's where we really saw that. So what Zachary is asking is, why do we see those S_ library codes and then we just see the plain 3-letter library codes? Well, because we have libraries in Westchester Library System that have branch locations. Evergreen looks at those as little mini library systems. So the S stands for system _ Ardsley _ Bedford Hills. Now, for our locations that do have those branches, Mount Pleasant, for example, you'll see those two listed underneath them. It's typically just a container for all of our locations. They're grayed out, so we can't select them. If you ever do see this as an option to select, you don't want to because it's not a real location. And so if I accidentally was able to place a hold for S _ MTP, it's not going to go anywhere because Evergreen knows it's not a real location, but it's really just part of the software just to have all of our locations with branches grouped together. The grayed out functionality of it is fairly new. That we were only able to disable that within, I think it was like the last 2 years. So it was a real training issue to, get the point that do not select these. Okay. All right. All right, so I'm going to go back to my home icon, and actually, yes, I'm going to go back home and we're going to check out to a patron. So I'm going to do it from my quick start menu, and I'm just going to click on checkout, and this is going to prompt me to scan my patron's library card. Now, as mentioned, if my patron doesn't have their library card, I can always open up patron search. But I want you guys to remember that your library is going to have its own process for handling patrons that don't have their cards on them. Typically, we want to ask for some form of ID. We want to make sure that this is actually the person saying who they are. So your library will most likely ask for some form of ID. If they don't have their wallet on them for whatever reason, then your library may be okay with asking them to offer information. Can you confirm your street address? Can you confirm your phone number? And then, say, yes, this is the John Smith that is standing in front of me. So I want you to verify that with your heads of circulation at your libraries when that comes up, because at some point it will come up. I also want to talk about your profile group and location in your patron search, because these two settings are sticky, meaning that if I was searching for a patron within a specific library, so if I'm looking for John Smith, but I know John Smith is an Ardsley patron, to narrow down my search results, I'm going to narrow it down to just Ardsley. Next time I open up patron search, chances are Ardsley will still be in there. And so if I'm searching for someone, let's say I'm searching for myself, I'm not getting any search results. I start to panic. Evergreen's broken. I call IT. Allison looks at my screen and goes, nope, you're not broken. You just didn't set this back to West. Once you do, then your search results are going to load. The same will happen for profile group. So profile group is going to give us a list of all of the available profiles that we can register patrons under. Typically, we're going to see adult, teen, or juvenile as the most common profiles. The other profiles that are available, you can see in this list, but yours may vary from mine. You'll see temporary or online only or guest or courtesy or staff. All of our profiles control how our patrons can use our system. So how many items can they check out? How many holds can they place? What's their fine threshold? And as I searched myself, you can see there are 3 listings that come up. And if you were to search yourself, you're probably going to see something kind of similar. So my profile for my workstation name is Global Administrator. You guys are typically going to see library circulation, and that's what your Evergreen account is based off of. Anytime you see your name, typically it's going to be a first name dot last name. That's an account or a profile. It's not a barcode. Items can't get checked out to it, and holds cannot be placed for it. Your numeric barcode is typically going to be either for a staff card or your personal card, because one of the privileges that we get as library staff is we can have 2 cards. If we live, work, go to school, or own property in Westchester County, we are able to get a personal library card. That applies to anyone. But because we work at libraries also, we can get a second card with a staff profile. And one of the perks is we don't get overdue fines. Because sometimes you may need to place holds for a book club or summer reading or battle of the books, or for displays, or you're working on a project, you're moving a ton of stuff into storage or out of storage. And so sometimes it's easier to check items out to that card. That staff card is a tool for that. Now, any questions about that? We're going to talk more about that when we get into registering profiles. So I'm using one of my dummy patrons. This is not a real patron. This is just used for testing. So when I scan my patron's barcode, it's going to open up their profile and I can just start checking items out to them. So I'm going to, and nothing happened. That's okay. As I scan my items, they're going to be listed in the bottom half of my screen. And this is another place, actually every place in the patron profile has the opportunity to customize your columns. So with checkout, typically my biggest recommendation is to have the due date column there. If you don't have anything else, if you want to go totally rogue and get very random with the columns you choose, at least have the due date there, because patrons, if they don't want their receipt, they just will ask, when is this due? So it's good to have that. Now, from time to time, things may not go according to plan when we're scanning our items at checkout. And that just happens. That's just part of it. And so sometimes if I'm scanning items and I'm not seeing them listed, it's possible that I clicked out of that field, my scanner didn't pick up the full barcode, or sometimes alerts pop up. So this alert that I'm seeing right now, if you can't see it, it says open circulation. There is an open circulation on the requested item. This item was checked out by another patron. And my options are normal check-in, then check out, or cancel. So what happened here? My patron pulled this item off the stacks. They want to check it out. They brought it up to me. I scanned it and Evergreen says, this is still checked out to someone else. So I'm going to click normal check-in, then check out. And what that's doing is Evergreen is taking it off that previous patron's account, freeing it up, making it available, and then checking it out to Lee. And sometimes that does happen. Sometimes books come back, we're checking them in, we miss one, and then someone reshelves it. And so that item has just been checked out to that patron this whole time. But because the item is physically in our hands, we know it got back, it's here, it can be checked out, it is technically available, we can force that through. Something else you might see from time to time at checkout is what is called a pre-cat. A pre-cat happens when the scanner doesn't pick up the full item barcode. If you ever see this pop up, I want you to click cancel and try scanning the item again. 9 times out of 10, that resolves the issue. For that one time it doesn't, you can fill out this pre-cat. Pre-cat stands for pre-cataloged item. So Evergreen knows you're trying to check something out to a patron. It does not recognize the barcode. So this item was not cataloged. That's the assumption there. A pre-catalog allows us as staff to make a on-the-fly record so that this item can be checked out to the patron and it will circulate for the appropriate amount of time. And then when it comes back, an alert will pop up at the check-in screen, prompting staff to send that book to cataloging. So whoever's at your tech services desk can either change out the barcode and delete this on-the-fly record. When you fill it out, you do want to include the title, You do want to include the author. In the ISBN, though, I do recommend actually putting in the barcode of the item if it's eligible, like if it's legible. Sometimes barcodes do get destroyed and they cannot be read. If that happens, then, the ISBN is fine. And then the circulation modifier. You do want to choose book for circulation modifier if the item is a book. If it's a DVD, you want to choose DVD. The circulation modifier, or circ mod, is what controls the circulation period. So books are typically going to circulate for 21 days unless they're express items. So express items, those are our brand new items. Typically 14-day express, 7-day express. 1-day express isn't so common, but you'll see that, in the 3-day for things mostly mobile hotspots or laptops. And this will also control fines. So there are libraries in Westchester Library System that are fine-free, meaning they do not collect overdue fines. But for libraries that do, circ mods do play a part in that. Okay, so my items are checked out to my patron, and I can finish this transaction with my patron, print out the receipt and help the next person in line, or go back to whatever it is that I was doing. So if I'm done with this patron, I'm going to click done. It's print out the receipt or email it. If my patron says they don't want a receipt, I can just open up that little drop down and click no receipt. If my patron has an email address saved to their account and it doesn't look like Lee does, I can also email the receipt to them. Quick receipt is going to take care of the receipt information, but it's going to keep the patron's page open. And so this may make sense to do if a patron has questions about when their holds are due, or if they have any bills, or anything for that matter. My items out tab right next to checkout, this is going to update in real time anytime I check out to my patron. So items that are listed in checkout are automatically moved into my items out. Again, my columns, I want to have these customized, because if my patron has questions about the items that are checked out to them, there are columns that I need to have in here that's going to help me answer questions. Typically, when is that item due? Well, when did I check it out? How many renewals do I have left? That kind of stuff. If I want to customize this, if I want to remove or add columns, I'm going to open up that gear icon. Again, I can choose by scrolling, but I do think it's easier to click manage columns. And as I'm scrolling down, just to show you how much information we can apply to this screen. There's also 3 sub-tabs that you'll notice in items out. So items checked out, that's what the default is. That's what new items in good status are going to be moved into. Anytime something is lost or long overdue or damaged, will automatically be moved into other special circulations. The items are going to stay checked out to that patron, but it's just Evergreen separating them from the items that are considered to be okay. I also have actions available to me, and you'll notice the actions menu in quite a few places in Evergreen. I have to have something selected in order to apply actions, but to show you what we can do from items out is I can print receipts again. So if my patron opted out for the receipt, but then as they're walking out, they're self-aware and they know, oh, actually, I'll never remember that due date. Yeah, can I have that receipt? We can select everything and print that receipt out. We can edit the due date for items. Typically, you're not going to do that very often. But if let's say that patron is part of a book club and those books are supposed to be due the next time the book club meets and we forgot to do that at checkout, well, we can do that after the fact. We can mark items as damaged. So when we pull items out of the book drop and we notice that it's sopping wet and it smells like cigarettes and cats and it's torn to shreds, before we check it in, we can mark the item damaged by going into the patron's account, or we can also do that from the check-in screen. If a patron is brave and admits that they lost an item, we can mark the item lost. And what that will do is it's going to take it out of items checked out into that other special circulations tab. And it's automatically going to bill the patron for the price of those books. Even if I'm a fine-free library, Evergreen is still going to charge my patron fines if an item is lost or damaged. Fines follow the checkout library. I'm going to say that one more time. The fine rules follow the checkout library. It doesn't matter where the item comes from. It matters where it gets checked out. So if your library does collect fines and fees for overdue items, but the patron asks for that item to get sent to Peekskill, where they are fine-free, and it gets checked out, they're not going to accrue fines unless that item gets marked lost. Evergreen will automatically mark an item lost 30 days after the due date. Patrons are going to be notified leading up to that. Now, you can always check and see if a patron is getting notified, because sometimes patrons will say, well, I never got the email. I never got the notice. How was I supposed to know? We can call their bluff, and we can do that by going into that other dropdown and going into triggered events and notifications. Triggered events is going to have two categories: circulations and holds. And so Lee Flowers has been an upstanding patron, and they haven't done anything wrong up until now. So there's really not going to be a log here. But if there is information here, this is going to tell you if that patron got the 3-day pre-due courtesy notice. Evergreen is going to email patrons 3 days before the due date to remind them the item's coming due. 7 days after the due date, if it hasn't been returned, Evergreen will send another email. 7 days past due. 14 days past due. 21 days past due. And then at 30, they're going to get a marked lost email. We're also going to get a letter that gets printed out, that someone at your library is in charge of printing those letters out and mailing it to the patrons. This log is going to tell you the name of that event. So it will say email sent, phone call sent, text message sent. Event state will either say invalid or complete. Invalid means the patron's telling the truth, they didn't get it. Complete means they did. So if it's an email and it says complete, well, maybe you need to check your spam folder. Maybe it got sent there by mistake. If it was invalid, well, okay, well, let's verify that we have all of the correct contact information, and we'll go into the edit screen and make all of the necessary updates. When we edit patrons, there's quite a few things that we can do here. Typically, the most common, though, is either replacing the barcode if a patron loses their card or updating their expiration date. So when it's time to renew a patron's card, patrons do get emailed a month before their cards expire. When we are, and the patron, some libraries are okay with patrons calling and doing it over the phone. Some patrons prefer that they come in person. It does not matter what that patron's home library is. So an Ardsley patron can walk into Mount Kisco and they can have their library card renewed. The only times you may not want to renew a patron that doesn't belong to you is if you see a lot of red in their account. So for example, Lee owes $60. they have a fine threshold applied to their account. Thresholds will happen at $30. $25, excuse me. $25 is the fine threshold. So after a patron owes $25, they get a block applied. If a patron has more than 75 items checked out, a block gets applied. If they have more than 35 holds, a block gets applied. Now, a block doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad patron or that they're in trouble, but it's kind of a signal to let the patron know that, hey, we need to slow down and we just need to get some of these things taken care of. When it comes to the bills, depending on the library, they may be okay with accepting partial payment if it's an overdue fine. But I can see these are lost materials. No matter what library you work at, if they're fine free or not, if they're lenient with fees or not, lost materials need to be paid in full. There is no time where it's ever acceptable to accept partial payment for a lost item. You also want to take a look at who owns that book, because your library may be okay with accepting payment for that book. But if this book belongs to someone else, they may have a whole protocol for handling lost items. Some libraries want the patron to replace the book. Some libraries don't want replacements at all. They just want the money. Some libraries may want a check made out. Some libraries may want cash. So you need to look and see who owns that item, and you need to call that library and ask how they want to handle this. Okay. So if there is a lot of red in that patron's account, you may want to refer them to their home library to get renewed. But if everything's in good standing, let's pretend that Lee doesn't have any of these thresholds or bills, and Lee walks into just any library in Westchester. We can go ahead and we can renew. And so if I click that update expire date, it's going to renew her account 3 years from today's date. I can also open up the calendar and choose a specific date as well. And typically, the profiles last for 3 years. There are a few that are only for 1 year, or 3 months, 6 months, or 2 weeks, depending on that profile. But for our normal patrons, adult, teen, juvenile, those are 3 years. Staff is also 3 years. Replacing a barcode. So a patron lost their library card. We can click on the replace library card button, and it's going to delete the barcode, and we can scan the new card as needed. And I'm just going to type in this barcode because I don't want to use the one I have right now. And when I click off, the OPAC staff client username field doesn't get updated on its own. I have to copy and paste the new barcode into this field. The barcode field is what is used in the staff client. So when a patron gives us their library card, this is what we're scanning. Evergreen is looking at this number. When patrons are doing their own thing, when the patrons are logging into the app, into the catalog, the patron catalog, this is what they're logging in with, the OPAC staff client username. Typically, it's going to match. Typically, it's going to be a barcode in both places. Sometimes you might see a weird username in there. And that's because patrons can update that on their own. So if I'm ever updating someone's barcode or replacing their barcode, I want to pay attention to that field too. If there's a weird or not weird, but if there is something customized in there, I'm going to let it be. But if it's a barcode, I need to make sure that the new one is also in this field as well. And I'm just using my Control Z tab because I don't actually need to. Now, if I ever scan a barcode or I reuse a barcode, Evergreen's going to tell me, because one of our system-wide policies that's applied to every library in the system is we never reuse patron barcodes ever. Never, ever. So the reason for that is because patron stats are permanently tied to that barcode. And you can see what that looks like by clicking on this See All button. See All is going to list every barcode that's ever been saved in this patron's profile. And so I cannot delete the old inactive barcodes without deleting the entire patron record because they're linked together. I have libraries ask me all the time, can we just delete that old barcode? It's so confusing. What if the patron brings in their old library card? We can't. We can't without deleting Lee from the entire system. And we don't want that because if we delete that patron, we're deleting all of the statistics that we can get from that patron for our annual report. So that's why. And that's also why we can't reuse the barcodes for anyone else. I'm going to pause for questions real quick. Okay. Now, what happens if a patron does show up with an old barcode and they hand it over? They still have their old library card. What does that do? What does Evergreen do? Well, I'll show you. Let's log back in real quick. If I scan an old barcode, it still pulls the patron up. I get this alert, says patron account retrieved with an inactive card. So if I'm at the circ desk and I see that, I'm going to look at the card in my hand. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to compare it to what's listed here because whatever's listed in the profile summary, that's the current barcode. If I try to check out with this barcode, the old barcode, it won't let me. So that's an opportunity to have a conversation with that patron and says, it looks like this is an old library card. Do you have your current one? I can't give this back to you. Do you want me to dispose of it for you? I can't check out to this card. Every library is going to have their own script for these types of things. So just check with your supervisor or your colleagues on, how you want to have that conversation. Back in edit, there also may be times where a patron moves to a different town in Westchester. So this patron, their home library is WLS, the Westchester Library System office, and they move to Portchester. So a patron is standing in front of me and they give me their updated ID and whatever other proof of address that my library requires, and they're filling out the application. I don't need to create a new patron record. I do not need to register a brand new account for this patron. I'm going to go into their existing account. I'm going to replace the barcode with the new library card because every library has what's called a prefix. So your library card is going to have the same 5 numbers for all of your patrons. And then another library in Westchester is going to have their own unique prefix. And that's how Evergreen is also matching things to patrons, home libraries to patrons. After I update that card, I'm going to scroll down. And then in home library, I'm going to update the home library. What did we say? We said Portchester. To Portchester. And then I'm going to scroll down and then I'm going to update the address too. And I'm going to ask if the phone number needs to get updated, the email needs to get updated, and so on. So I'm just updating the profile with the new information. I am not recreating them. Any questions? So I'm going to move back over to bills. And so we see these bills listed beneath us and they're highlighted in like this pinkish reddish color. Anytime we see that, that's because Evergreen wants to grab our attention. It says, hey, you need to look at this. You need to resolve this this issue right now. So I talked about lost items. Anytime something is lost, we need to contact the owning library, see how they want to handle it. If it's us, then we should know how we handle it. Check with your supervisor. You may be willing to accept a replacement copy. You may just prefer that the patron pays for it. Other fees that your library might collect are typically going to be overdue fines, but sometimes there may be miscellaneous fines. Maybe you charge printing through the patron's account, or maybe you're having a book sale and you're charging them this way. You can create bills for patron with the Bill Patron button. It's going to ask you to choose a billing type. So bounce check, damaged items. So this is one way that we can charge for damaged items. Holds, ILL, lost cards. Some libraries do charge for replacement library cards. It's typically about $1. Miscellaneous, privilege, or referral. Most likely, it's going to be either miscellaneous, lost card. You'll enter in the amount that you're charging, and then I do recommend including a note. This is going to describe what this bill is for. So I'm just going to say book club or book sale, excuse me. And this patron bought $7. We're charging them $7. So this bill has not exceeded the fine threshold, and because it's miscellaneous, it's not a lost item. It's just in plain old white. So I can differentiate this one compared to lines 2 and 3. Have different levels of importance, so to say. There's also going to be a summary at the top of my screen so I can see the total owed, how much they were billed, and how much that patron has paid towards that bill as well. Over on the right is where my patron or where we accept payment. So cash is going to be the default payment option, but if your library accepts checks, check is an option. If your library has card readers, you can choose credit card or debit card. And then patron credit. Not every library accepts patron credit, but what that is instead of giving physical change back to the patron, you convert it to credit to live in their account that they can use towards future bills. Check with your library about this because this is sticky, meaning if I turn it on for one patron, it's going to stay turned on for all the patrons I work with until I turn it off. After patron credit, we have what I call the action-based payment methods. So work, forgive, and goods. Work is my favorite because it's such a strange payment option to have there. And I like to say that it's open to interpretation. How I see libraries using this, though, is there are libraries in the system that allow patrons to read off their fines, which I think is incredible. So if a patron hangs out in the library for 45 minutes reading, it shaves off $2, $3, $5, whatever. So you could use work as that payment type and just put in the payment received. So it was $5 that they read off. Forgive is out of the kindness of our own heart. So forgive allows us as staff to make a decision that we can either forgive the entire bill or we can forgive a portion of the bill. So I do need to select which bill I'm applying the payment towards. So because Lee has to figure out how to handle the lost items, she has to replace the copies for WLS. We're only handling this miscellaneous bill here. So that's what I have selected. And she explained to me, she already has to pay $60 to replace those books. $7 is just going to push her over the edge this month. And I get it. I get it. So I'm going to forgive $5 and I'm going to apply my payment. And this is my receipt printing out. So now they're down to $2. Maybe they can pay the $2. Maybe I'm okay with forgiving the entire thing. The last payment type option is goods. So when Lee does buy those replacement copies, that's when I'm going to select these guys, because WLS, we want those replacement copies. And so Lee drives over to us. She bought them. She has them. They're the exact replacements for what she lost. I'm going to select these two. I'm going to select payment type, goods for my payment type. And then I am going to put in $60 because the owed for selected is $60. And I'm going to apply my payment. And if I refresh, those red threshold banners or alerts are removed from Lee's account. I can also select any bills listed. And if I want a further breakdown, if a patron's really confused on how that bill came to be, I can always select that bill. I can right click on my mouse, or I can open my actions menu and I can look at the full details. And the full details will give me a billing statement. It's going to tell me at the top where this bill was created, the type. So grocery, you're going to see that anytime it's a miscellaneous bill or a manually entered bill. And then the breakdown of it. So the billing, the payment, and all of that. And then details is going to give me a listed or itemized version of that. To get back, I'm just going to click on the bills tab to take me back. Other actions and bills, so I can print these out for my patrons. So sometimes a patron wants to see them printed out. I can void. I do not recommend voiding, because voiding is going to delete the bill at the history of the bill. So if my library is okay with deleting the bill, instead I'm going to choose adjust to 0, because this will retain history. Of that adjustment. Okay. Questions about bills? Okay. And then holds. So patrons that have holds, they will be listed here. I can place a hold from a patron's account. That place hold button is going to open up the staff catalog for me. And that patron's information is already going to be input. So this says placing a hold for patron Flowers, Lee. So Lee wants to check out Wedding People. She's heard about it long enough. All of her friends have read it, and she figures it's probably been long enough where I can probably get this this fairly quickly. So I can just search that title, place a hold, and Lee's information is already in there. Okay, and I'm just going to use my back arrows to go back, or I can click on her name to go back into her account. Actions for holds, so I can edit holds after they've already been placed. So if my patron says, oh, wait, I meant to ask, can I pick that up somewhere else? We can do that. We can edit the pickup library until it's physically on the hold shelf. So I can change the pickup library after we place that hold. I can edit the notification settings. So if a patron says, oh, I won't be able to answer my phone or receive text messages, can I actually just get an email notification for that? We can do that. Edit hold dates is where we can set specific activation dates, whereas underneath that, you'll see activate. So if a hold is suspended, we suspended it when we placed a hold for them, and a patron calls us or they're standing in front of us, they're like, I'm ready for that now. The second we choose activate, Evergreen's going to wake up and start looking for an available copy to fill it. Whereas if we set a specific date, like we landed on March 31st earlier, we can say, don't start looking to fill this until that date comes. I can also cancel holds from here. So canceled holds are going to live in that recently canceled holds. I don't think Lee has any, but they're typically going to hang out in here. Sometimes they do expire or age out, but you can cancel them as long as they are displayed in here. The last thing I want to talk about in the actions is find another target. Find another target. It's just telling Evergreen to find another replacement copy for this hold. So maybe I pull an item off the shelf for a patron, or it comes in from the bins and I realize it's in really bad condition. It's going to fall apart the second it leaves this place. And so I'm telling Evergreen, this copy isn't good enough. Find me another one. I don't need to cancel the hold and place another hold on it. I just need Evergreen to look somewhere else for it. Okay, I see something in the chat, so I'm just going to pause. So Stephanie says, I once processed a payment without receipt on payment, checked off, and hence did not print a receipt. Since we needed the receipt for our records, I tried to go to history transactions to find it under actions. I ended up highlighting the info from the transaction, printed it on a receipt, but is there a better way to retrieve the receipt? So unfortunately, no. What Stephanie did is pretty much what I would have done, and that's why we want to make sure that that is selected at all times. Another thing I want to talk about is anonymization periods. Anonymization periods are going to show up typically in item status, and it's going to look or be titled as an aged circulation. One of our system-wide policies is for patron privacy. So 30 days after an item gets checked in, all of the patrons' ties to that circulation are permanently deleted from the system. So if an item is lost, or not lost, but if an item is on the shelf and we don't know who had it lost, but we want to track down because maybe the DVD case, the DVD was never returned with it. And you know, whoever checked it in, they didn't catch it. And so we want to find the last person that had it, and we want them to bring back the disc. 30 days after it's returned, it's impossible to find that out. I can't find it. Lindsay can't find it. It's just gone. The same refers to bills. And so 30 days after a bill was paid and that item is checked in, we can't find out who that patron is attached to that bill ID. And that may not seem like the worst thing in the world, but if I'm Stephanie and I need to keep track of, the records and the bills coming in, and I have a list of titles that were lost and paid for, well, what was lost and paid for? Because if it's after that 30 days, that title might not be available to me. So I don't know what got lost and what was paid for. And have to, do a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's why we want to be on top of things when we're checking items in. When we are handling bills, we want to make sure that that is turned on. Okay. Questions? All right. Last but not, I see something. Thank you for clarifying. You're welcome. Before we exit the patron's account, lastly, I'm just going to talk about notes. We can leave notes in the patron's accounts. Depending on what the note's about, we may need it to be more visible to staff, Or it might be okay to just have it in the notes interface. When we need to leave a note in a patron's account, we click that create note button, and then we're going to be asked to choose, is it a note, is it an alert, or is it a block? A note is going to be less visible. So I'm going to say for this example, Lee is a friend of the library. I'm going to click OK, and then that's just going to hang out in here. So when Lee comes in, I'm not going to see that information, but I know that there's something in that parentheses next to notes. So I know that there is information in here, and then I can come to this page. I can't read it unless I select it, open actions. And if I click edit, then I can see what's in that text. Or I can just make sure I repeat what's in that field in the note text box, and then I can see it. If this is information that is more relevant, maybe staff need to know this right away, I'm going to choose an alert. So Lee is okay with her kids using her card. When I click OK, my alert is listed under the patron's name, and it highlights her name in red as well as the alert message, because this is going to grab my attention when I pull her account up. Anytime that alerts or notes need to be deleted, I can select them. I can archive them. So if it's relevant information, well, maybe, Lee being a friend of the library, maybe, she's not a friend anymore, but that's relevant information. I'm going to archive that. And so that's going to hang out down here. Whereas maybe, Lee is tired of her kids, using her card, and, they should just get their own card anyway. So she's put her foot down. She doesn't want that anymore. So we're just going to remove it and take it out of her account. All right. There's a lot that can be done in a patron's profile. Typically, we're just checking items out, or we're just doing minor updates to their profile. But I want you guys to see that there are places and times where we may need to do a little bit of investigation, or we may need to fix something, or change the pickup location, or reprint something for a patron. And this is where we can do that. So I'm using my home icon to go back to my home page, and I'm going to talk about registering patrons very briefly. Every library in the county is going to handle registering patrons slightly differently. And I mean that in a way that registration forms or applications are going to have slightly different questions, because not every library cares or asks for the same information from their patrons. Specifically, I'll use birthday as an example. Some libraries do not care when a patron is born. Some patrons, they'll just ask for the birth year to determine, are you a juvenile, are you a teen, or are you an adult? There's a library that just use adult profiles for all their patrons, no matter what age they are, because it's the same permissions for every patron profile, or not every patron profile, but for the adult, teen, and juvenile. There is really no difference with how those profiles work. So that library just doesn't really care. So they don't really ask for birthdays at all. Or some libraries do. So their applications are going to look a little bit different. When your patron fills out your application and they give you a form of ID, you're going to check it against the application, and then you're going to come into register patron. Before you start filling this out, I want you to be aware that there are 3 different ways to look at and fill this out. It will default to the all field. And so as I scroll down, you can see that it's asking for quite a bit of information. Not all of it is going to be collected by your library, but All fields will ask for things like prefix, middle name, suffix. This is also where it will ask for your birthday, parent guardian information, secondary ID type, all sorts of stuff in here. Also patron preferred language, which I think this is a fairly new option here, and I'm actually very happy that we do finally have that. Switching over to suggested, this is a little bit more condensed. It's still going to ask for the basic information and birthday, but this does not have, oh, it does have patron preferred language. Excellent. Okay. And then required. So this is just asking for the basic stuff. And the required fields, no matter which way you're looking at this, they're always going to be highlighted in yellow. So if I try skipping over any of these, Evergreen will not let me save. It will not let me save the patron record until these get filled out. So I have a brand new patron. I'm going to scan their, no, excuse me, stop that. Okay, I'm going to scan my new library card. It's automatically going to be copied into the OPAC staff client name. And then where it says password, there's going to be a random 4-digit number in here. I'm going to ignore it for now. When I'm filling out my patron's name, I'm entering that information in all caps. And this is system-wide, and this is just to make sure that the data is uniform. So test patron. My library does not care about birthday, so I'm skipping over that. My primary ID type was a driver's license. There's only driver's license or other as the options there. Some libraries do not fill that in. Some libraries do. Preferred language, some libraries fill this in, some don't. My patron speaks English. And then email. Not every patron is going to want to give you their email address, and that's okay. When I come across that situation or scenario, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to say not available, or I'm not going to enter in no email, or I'm not going to say no at no.com. Do you know why? If you look at my screen, can you tell me why?
You can uncheck the email hold notification instead of
Exactly. Thank you, Stephanie. So Evergreen is going to help you out. Example, if no email, uncheck the email hold notification under user settings. If I scroll down to user settings and I unchecked email, it's not required anymore. I can just skip over it. This wasn't the case when we first got Evergreen. And so you will see older patron records that say no email, or just, a bunch of random figures in there. If you see that, delete it and just deselect email, because we want to make sure that all of our data is clean and tidy. If your patron doesn't want to give their email, that's okay. Just deselect it from the user settings. Right beneath the email address, this is where patrons can opt in. If they give an email, they can opt in to have their receipts emailed to them by default also. You can turn that on at patron registration, or you can turn that on just editing their patron profile. Their daytime phone, this is a required field that cannot be skipped over. So as I fill this out, I'm going to put in my number. This is my office number. And this, I have autofill turned on. So yep, it filled out everything else. That's okay. But as I fill that out, if I click off, it automatically copied the last 4 digits of the daytime phone number into that password field. That is standard. So pins or passwords are always going to start off as being the last 4 digits of the patron's daytime phone number. Patrons use their PINs to log into the catalog, into the app, into the e-resources like Hoopla or Libby or Canopy or whatever asks them for a library card number and PIN. Sometimes you'll get a phone call and a patron will say, I'm trying to log into Libby and it won't let me, and I don't know what's wrong. My card's not expired. I don't have any fines. I don't know what's going on. And sometimes it's just the PIN needs to get resaved. So you would go into the patron's account and all you would do is you'd scroll down until you see that daytime phone number, copy and paste the last four, and just resave it. That usually fixes that issue, or patrons just don't know. They don't know that that's going to be their PIN going forward. And so, after they sign up for a card, someone forgets to tell them that. Also, as you fill out your patron's information, Evergreen is actively checking against all of the other existing patrons in the system to make sure that there's no duplicate patrons. So I can see 2 patrons with the same name, 9 patrons with the same phone number, 144 patrons with the same address. If I click on any of these, it's going to open in a new tab and it's going to have them listed. And so I can say, oh, okay, so this patron does have the same name, but that person lives on that street, different phone number, different library, and a different profile. This person, blah, 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 blah. So it's just a common name. That's why those columns are handy to have, because I can quickly see that's just a coincidence. The home library, that's going to default to your workstation. Evergreen's assuming this patron's getting registered at WLS, that's going to be their home library. Sometimes you may get a patron that walks in and actually belongs somewhere else. That's part of the reason why we want to check their ID and we want to make sure that they should be one of our patrons. Now, we're not going to turn anyone away. We're not going to say, hey, beat it, get out of here, go to your town. We don't want you here. That's terrible customer service, and that's going to turn them off from using the libraries. So we're going to register them, and we're going to fill all of this stuff out. The only difference is we're going to find out what the appropriate home library would be. On your desktops, there is a shortcut, and it's the Library Area Service Viewer. I believe that's the order of those words. You can also find it in your patron catalog that is linked in there, and it's also on the WLS website. Essentially, you're just going to type in the patron's address, and it's going to show a map of all the libraries in Westchester, and it's going to show you exactly where they belong. And so, nope, cancel. Let's switch over. And I'll show you what that looks like. Can you see my screen right now? I'm on the Westchester Library System website. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
Sometimes Zoom doesn't show new tabs. So the Library Service Area Viewer. So these are all of the libraries in Westchester. And if I type in a patron's address, well, there it is. It's going to load, and then it's going to show me where this patron should go. Now, this is a Cortland Manor patron. Cortland Manor doesn't have its own library. So this is a contracted patron, meaning that the surrounding towns of Cortland Manor have a contract to serve those patrons. So this patron can go to Montrose, they can go to Peekskill, or they can go to Yorktown and sign up for a card there. There are quite a few towns in Westchester that do not have their own designated libraries. And so this is going to be really helpful to figure out where that patron should sign up. Now, so we figured out, well, this patron doesn't, all of these libraries that have, matched this patron, they're still not my location of where they're physically standing in front of me. So I'm going to have a conversation with them, and I'm just going to be like, out of those three, which one are you going to show up to? And they said, oh, I'm going to show up to Montrose. And I love that for them. So I'm going to choose that from my drop down. That's their home library. But for their permission group or their profile, excuse me one moment. Instead of choosing adult, I'm going to look for temp. Temp is short for temporary. I'm creating a temporary profile for this patron. So I'm getting them set up in the system, and I'm not going to give them a barcode for my library. I'm going to give them a temporary barcode. Every library handles this a little bit differently. Some libraries will just write temp card, March 2026. Some libraries will do something a little bit differently. But I'm going to fill out the rest of the profile normally. I'm going to ask them what their user settings will be. Do they want a phone call when their holds are available? Do they want an email? Do they want a text? They don't want to be notified at all. I don't recommend that. I do. Some patrons may fight you on that, and choose your battles. But if they're going to be placing holds, I do recommend that they are notified some way, somehow. Okay. So SMS, that's just a text message notification. And then you would just enter in their cell phone number. And it's perfectly fine if it's the same number as their daytime phone number. You would just copy and paste that in there. For their address, I had autofill turned on so you can see that my street is in regular caps, but my city and county and state are in all caps. The proper way of filling out address information is all caps. So the same way that patron names are all caps, so should the address. Also, when you fill in the address information of the patron, if you start off with the postal code 510523, Evergreen knows which towns belong to which zip codes in Westchester. So it will fill out that city, county, and state information for you. So you just have to enter in the street address. And then country is USA. All right. Questions about patron registration? Before we move on, I also just want to touch on age limits for patrons getting cards. There is no official age requirement for getting a Westchester Library card. It's up to the library themselves. Some libraries are okay with babies getting cards. Baby's first library card, yay. Some patrons want patrons to at least be old enough to sign the application. Mom and dad can fill it out, but they at least want them to write their name in there. That's going to be, it's completely individual to that location. So just make sure that you are aware of how your library is handling those age requirements. I also want to just stress, I brought it up earlier, but I also just want to repeat myself. Anyone in Westchester County that lives, goes to school, owns property, owns property, or works in Westchester County can sign up for a library card. So if they live in Putnam County, but they work in Westchester, as long as they can show, like, my office is in the town of Portchester, they can get a Portchester library card. That is perfectly fine. There are patrons that don't fit into any of those categories that still want to sign up for a card. Those are called fee patrons or non-resident patrons. And Westchester Library System handles them. And those patrons pay an annual fee to access all of the Westchester Library System's resources. So for patrons that are 65 years or older, or anyone living with a disability, they can sign up for a card for $35. Anyone signing up that is younger than 65, it's an annual fee of $75. Patrons are asked to fill out an application form, and that can be found on the Westchester Library System website. This is the application form. They print it out, they fill it out, they mail it in to WLS, and they include a check. I do not accept cash. If they want to pay with a credit card, they can contact me and we can get that set up for them. If a patron is at your library asking for this application form, I am expecting and relying on you to make sure that they are following the instructions. They are not making the check out to your library. They are not handing you cash. You are not giving them a card. All of that has to be sent on to WLS. Okay, so let's close out of that. And we are at 11:45. So I'm going to talk about check-in. Check-in is fairly straightforward. However, some things do pop up sometimes. So at check-in, before I even start scanning my items, I have my columns customized, but my library also needs to let me know what kind of check-in modifiers should I be using. Check-in modifiers can be found in this drop-down menu in the bottom right corner, and this modifies how my items get checked in. So something that I do recommend that everyone has turned on in their workstation is auto print hold and transit slips. The reason why you want this turned on is because this is going to print out the receipts for you fairly quickly. Whereas if you don't, you're going to have to click through multiple alerts on your screen to get to that print preview page. So for example, if I just scan that in, and why isn't it getting checked in? Goodness gracious, that is annoying. Let's try just typing it in. 3103850002748. This item was marked lost and paid for, and it found its way back. Amazing. Okay, continue. So Evergreen is going to show me if I have the route to column. So this is one of the most important columns to have saved in check-in. The way I said that due date was the most important column to have at checkout, route to is the most important here, because this is going to tell you, does it go back on my shelves or does it go on to fill a hold at another library? If this were to fill a hold at another library, an alert on my screen would pop up with a little truck and some books on it for transit. I'd have to click OK. And then my print preview comes up. So I'm clicking through multiple things. Auto print hold and transit slips takes that first alert message away. Find free libraries are going to turn on amnesty mode. Amnesty mode is automatically going to delete any overdue fines that may have be associated with that book. So even if that book was checked out, if that book was checked out at a fine-free library, if it's overdue, it's not going to accrue fines. So checking it, having amnesty mode turned on at fine-free libraries, though, is going to make sure that if somebody checks out at another library that does accept fines, but they throw it in the book drop at a fine-free library, this is going to make sure that those fines get deleted as well. When we empty out the book drop in the morning, before we start scanning our items, what we're going to do is we're going to open up our little calendar icon here, and we're just going to switch it to the previous day or the last day that we were open. Some libraries are closed on Sundays. You'll see a backdated check-in alert pop up at the top of your screen, and it's also going to be repeated at the top. So items that were in the book drop, this is for all libraries, but specifically the libraries that do collect fees or fines. If a patron dropped the book off on the day it was due, technically they did. So we don't want it to accrue more overdue fines just because we were closed when they dropped it off. So this is going to delete any fines that accrued overnight. Now, what happens if I start scanning my book drop items and I forget to do that? Well, that's okay. I'm just going to select everything that I scanned so far. I'm going to open my actions menu and I'm going to choose backdate post check-in. And so this is going to allow me to switch that date back to whatever it needs to be. And so any overdue fines can get deleted. Other actions available to me is I can retrieve the last patron who circulated this item. So if that empty DVD case comes back to me and I open up retrieve last patron who circulated this item, it's going to pull up their account and I can see, okay, this is their phone number. I'm going to give them a call, ask them to bring that disc back for me. Other actions available is I can mark items damaged from here. I can mark items for discard weed. Discard weed is a status that gets applied to items that need to be deleted from the catalog, but maybe not just yet. So it's marking these items as undesirable. And so whoever does handle deleting items, they can find items with that status and delete them. Mark item as missing pieces. So I may want to mark that DVD case as missing pieces and set it to the side. Cancel transits. So if I have an item that needs to go fill a hold at another library, but it's in no condition to get sent out, I can tell Evergreen, cancel the transit status on this. This isn't going anywhere. I can add item alerts. So those little pop-ups that come in. So like we just saw, this item was marked lost and paid. I can create item alerts for when items get checked in. Specifically, you'll want item alerts for items that do have multiple pieces, things like DVDs or video games or any of the travel books that have maps in them. Those are good alerts to have because it's going to prompt staff to check for those pieces. However, that really is only successful if staff are looking at their screens. A hill that I will die on, and I say this to everyone that gets training for Evergreen that's new to Evergreen, you need to read your screen. Just because you hear the beep doesn't mean anything happened. You need to use your eyeballs to verify that things were scanned. Things were checked in and things were checked out. If there's an alert on your screen, you need to read it because some things may need to be edited. Some things may need to be deleted. Maybe you need to do some investigation on the last person that had it, but you won't know if you don't read your screen. Okay, that's my spiel. Okay, I can also see the holds for this title too. So I can get, this is going to open up the holds tab in the catalog. So I can see how many holds are on that specific title. And then I can also see the last few circulations for this item. So the last few circulations is going to be limited. This isn't working. Okay, that's okay. Let's open up item status to see what that will look like for you. In item status, it's going to open up in the listed view, but this detailed view is going to give me way more information about what's going on with this specific item. When I look at the last few circulations from check-in, what it's going to show me is it's going to show me the recent circ history, and I can see that repeated in the circ history list. It's going to show me 2 transactions listed. Transaction is just a circulation period from the time it was checked out to the time it was checked back in. If there is as long as it's within that 30-day window, that patron information will be linked. So I can say, oh, there they are. Let me open them up. Let me see what's going on in their account. If there is no information, if it's an aged circulation, let's see. That didn't work, but that's okay. This will say aged circulation and there will be no link to click on. But I can see when this item was checked out, which library, what was the due date, which workstation checked it out, which staff person checked it out, the if there were fines, when did those fines stop accruing, and so on. From item summary back in quick summary, I can see more information about the item as well. My title record will be listed at the top so I can see which record this specific item is linked to. I can see the ISBN. When was this created? Meaning, when was this item linked to this record? Who owns it? What's the shelving location? Is this visible in the patron OPAC? Can the patron see it? Can patrons place hold on it? What's the circ modifier, call number? How many times has it circulated? And then if it's checked out or not, what's the status of this item? What was the last due date? When was it checked out? Who checked it out? All of that information just from the quick summary. Now we're at 11:56. I am going to let you go in just a minute, but I need to talk about the IT Wiki with you. So you've heard me talk about circ modifiers and statuses, and you just heard me say shelving location. Well, all of those things are are typically tech services topics, but those are all background pieces that control how our items circulate and work in the catalog for our patrons. So I am going to be sending this information to you in the follow-up email I'm sending out with the recording. And this is basically going to be shortcuts to explanations on what are the different patron profiles. So this is going to give you some brief information on what you need to know when registering patrons. And then it's going to give you a table of all of the available profiles, how long until they expire, what are the limits, and so on. Same thing with holds. How do holds work? And then circulation policies. So circ modifiers. So what type of item is this? Is there a limit on how many can be checked out to a patron? The loan duration, how long can this circulate for? Are there fines associated that are different than other materials? Because for these specific types of things, Evergreen is looking at, can this circulate? Can this specific type of patron circulate this? How long can it be borrowed for? Can it be renewed or not? So there's all of these little moving pieces in the background that you don't necessarily think of, but Evergreen is actively checking against anytime you scan a barcode, whether it's a patron barcode or an item barcode. And then also, if you click on the logo for the IT Wiki, it brings you back to our homepage. There is a link for Evergreen Help. And if you scroll down, everything is broken up into topic. So these are help guides. There's often links to past trainings and anything from getting started with your workstation to searching the catalog, all things circulation, holds, patrons, tech services, running reports, all of that information is here. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're at 11:58, and I just want to see if there's any questions. Okay, so Zachary says, question about checking out. If the patron wants a receipt emailed and you mistakenly click done instead of email receipt from the dropdown, is there any way to send that email through Evergreen after the fact? Unfortunately, no. So the only option for the only option for receipts afterwards is a print version of that. However, as long as email is like the preferred option, like as long as patrons have that turned on, that will happen automatically. That email gets sent to them automatically. You'd have to specifically say no receipt for that patron if they have email turned on. Okay, any other questions? How are we feeling? Do we feel overwhelmed? Do we feel confident?
I feel pretty good after all this.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. So you guys are not going to be thrown to the wolves. This is not the only time you will ever have time with me. There is a IT help desk that you are allowed to reach out to for any questions relating to Evergreen. So I will include instructions on how to email the help desk in the follow-up. And anytime that you feel stuck or, someone's not available to answer your questions at the library, you can always reach out and ask. And also there's multiple trainings available. I do schedule specific Evergreen trainings quarterly. But if you ever want one-on-one training for a specific topic, that is also always on the table and available to all library staff. So with that, I am going to stop recording, and I want to thank you all for joining me this morning. And